France, 1943. Having capitulated in World War II, the country gradually began to get back on its feet and resist Nazi Germany. The fragmented French special services actively participated. The battle for survival was being fought by two powerful leaders, Charles de Gaulle and Henry Giraud. Both were generals, and each had his own intelligence service on a leash. The government formed the General Directorate of Special Services. The goal was to free the country from German occupation.
I believe that this was a war of egos between the heads of these services. And, perhaps, to have more influence on the presidential palace, on the prime minister. That is, who will be more influential. Because they are subordinate to either the president or the commander-in-chief.
But this body failed to exist for a long time. In 1944, it was reorganized into the General Directorate for Studies and Research. Constant rebranding occurred because Soviet agents infiltrated the French special services. So the Kremlin elite knew about every clearly built French step.
They managed to organize something like a nationwide French network. And even their own training camp de Beauregard, which the French army had to dismantle in the 1950s. This was due to the fact that many figures of the Comintern, as well as French leftists in general, saw the Soviet Union as a kind of ideal to which they aspired. And it was among them that the vast majority of those agents who worked for the KGB, MGB, NKVD, and so on were recruited. Among them is our countryman, the famous artist Mykola Lashchenko.
These factors led to the creation of the Service of External Documentation and Counterintelligence in 1945, after reforming and purging the French intelligence services of foreign spies. André de Wavrin, head of the new body, dismissed almost 9,000 employees and elevated the department. The new body had responsibilities like sabotage, surveillance of important foreign political figures, and destabilizing third world countries. As in most special services, the main task of the department was to protect France and its citizens from external threats. Simply put, intelligence and counterintelligence.
As for the activities of this new body, they were engaged in absolutely everything. It involved both intelligence and counterintelligence activities, and they didn't shy away from using completely illegal methods.
In the 50s, French involvement was evident in the Indochina War against nationalists opposing their colonial rule. Intelligence task was to find loyal people to France, form partisan groups and oversee their activities. Primarily, the agents did not participate in combat. They provided information and coordinated the partisans' subversive work. The Battle of Dien Bien Phu became a dead end. The Indochina conflict is seen as a major, shameful failure for both French intelligence and the army.
This was a mistake of the French military command from a strategic point of view. And from a tactical point of view, as a failure of the special services. Because they could not provide information coverage, they could not infiltrate their agents into the guerrilla units. At least, if they were able to implement, then they could not reveal the plans.
The year 1965. In Paris, the Moroccan politician Al-Mehdi Ben Barka is killed. There are many versions of his disappearance, but one is the most popular. King Hassan II attempted to remove the politician due to his opposition activities. And he asked for help from the French.
Hassan II was the king of Morocco. Morocco was a former French colony. French interests were in Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania. The whole northwest, west of Africa is nearby. Morocco is a rich country, there are various natural resources. Because Ben Barka was a communist, at least he supported leftist ideas, they were afraid. He had a very great influence. He could have overthrown him, maybe.
To maintain strong ties, Moroccans kidnapped Ben Barka, with the French helping to hide the body. To this day, there is no body, or even an approximate burial place. Journalists discovered that Israel and US special services might be involved. The incident sparked heavy criticism of the French intelligence.
They invited him to Paris again, he came. This is a cafe, over there, in the center of Paris. It turned out to be a trap, they wanted to get rid of him. Hassan II, his trusted aide Ukir, and a Moroccan general from the intelligence services were involved. It was he who did this, his elimination.
In the late 60s, the French Secret Service greatly influenced the Central African Republic. A character named Jean Bedel Bokassa appeared. He served with Charles de Gaulle's troops and became a colonel in the CAR. Later, he would become president, and eventually even emperor, though self-proclaimed. But these are not all the features of his character.
He was a real cannibal. According to some reports, he personally ate up to 9,000 people. His son, one of the crown princes, inherited this as well. His children were all crown princes. Among Bokassa's artistic achievements is the fact that he ate the country's only mathematician, the only dentist, and the winner of the country's first beauty contest.
The dictator came to power through a coup and in 1977 proclaimed himself Emperor Bokassa I. None of this would have occurred without the French special services aiding his rise to self-proclaimed fame.
So, Jean Bedel decided to crown himself emperor. He had all the power and the French went to unprecedented support, in fact, of such a rather exotic phenomenon as the coronation of Bokassa. Bokassa arranged it on a huge scale, absolutely insane spending in a country that did not have money itself. 100 limousines, 10,000 sets of silverware, a golden throne measuring 2 meters, made, of course, in France. The crown was made by the famous French company Arthus Bertrand, which still produces French awards.
Bokassa I persecuted the opposition, controlled the population, and was extremely cynical. One such case happened to schoolchildren who protested against expensive school uniforms. Over 100 children were killed. This case attracted international attention. A question arose: who brought Bokassa to power? The answer was the French. To cleanse their hands of others' blood, the French army and special services executed Operation Barracuda. On September 20, 1979, the French military and special service agents executed a successful coup. During Bokassa's visit to Muammar Gaddafi, agents and special forces seized control of his residence.
All they did was land on 2 key airfields, seize them, and then they made a march to the capital, where, without a drop of blood, they took over all the administrative buildings. Bokassa, being in Libya, actually found himself in front of the fact that the power no longer belongs to him. After that, Bokassa fled to the Ivory Coast, but in the end, he was able to bribe the French.
With the coming to power of the new government in the 80s, the agency was transformed into the DGSE, the General Directorate for External Security. President François Mitterrand decreed a reorganization, making the body subordinate directly to the Ministry of Defense, not the government.
This is the agency that later became the DGSE, the very same military counterintelligence. It represented France's interests abroad, and was also involved in an economic espionage.
The new body immediately began to perform tasks. In 1985, France's history marked Operation Satanique, or the sinking of the Exile Warrior. This was the ship used by the Greenpeace organization for monitoring missions. On July 10, near Auckland's port, the ship aimed to protest France's nuclear tests in open water. At that time, the ship's crew and passengers had no idea that this voyage would be their last.
The special services did not come up with anything smarter than to sink this Rainbow Warrior. In order to sink it, they sent 2 of their agents aboard the ship. A married couple, who were actually this sabotage group that was supposed to attach an explosive device to the side of the ship. What did they do? There were 3 groups of sabotage. One main group blew up the ship, and there were 2 control groups.
The French agents worked perfectly. After the first explosion, the agents evacuated. 10 minutes later, a second explosion occurred. The Rainbow Warrior sank in 4 minutes. But the operation couldn't be completed. New Zealand police detained 2 agents after they revealed their identities and motives. The catastrophe was seen as French military interference and labeled a terrorist act. Operation Satanique was a major French intelligence failure.
They planted a bomb, set it in motion and killed one of the members of the Greenpeace organization. That's how it was. Then the New Zealand government became very angry with France. It was an international scandal.
Since the early 2000s, the DGSE conducted at least 15 special operations known to the public. both successful and unsuccessful. Agents freed journalists from Iraqi captivity, tracked terrorists, and operated undercover in areas inaccessible to regular special forces. For example, leaking al-Qaeda base details in Iraq to the French elite and friendly global special services. The year 2006, a highly successful special services operation was launched. It was called the Olympic Games. Until 2010, the Americans, French, Israelis, and British analyzed millions of Iranian messages and conducted reconnaissance to prevent Iranian nuclear development. This was the first case of cyber warfare. It is unconfirmed, but media report the involvement of intelligence officers from various countries. And a virus meant to destroy nuclear weapons software accidentally spread online. Its uniqueness lies in the fact that it is the first computer virus that physically destroys infrastructure, as happened with centrifuges that generate uranium enrichment. The cyber attack delayed Iran's nuclear program by years.
The Operation Olympic Games is described as the first successful, fantastic, effective cooperation between the intelligence services of the United States and Israel. This was actually an organized cyber attack on Iran. But I have such an assumption, since in the Soviet Union all the equipment for monitoring the stations, the gas transmission system, they were made in France. I do not rule out that the same equipment is installed in Iran. French specialists worked there. Therefore, it is quite possible that behind this successful cyber attack called the Olympic Games there is cooperation not only between the United States and Israel, but also the French are partially involved in this.
What is known is the French Special Services' involvement in the Soviet Union's overthrow. Economic espionage specialists tried here. They recruited a top KGB officer who leaked 4,000 important strategic documents on the USSR economy. The securities were named the farewell list. The French and Americans targeted Russia's vulnerable gas transportation system. Moscow's plan to fund gas transit to Europe was quickly blocked by Washington and Paris through sanctions. And due to the lack of money and opportunities to get off its knees, the Union fell. This story happened during the time of Ronald Reagan in the 80s.
The blow was carried out by the joint efforts of American and French intelligence with the help of the famous French company Thomson. Since all safety quality control equipment on the gas pipeline was supplied by the French company Thomson. Due to the supply of knowingly problematic equipment, causing man-made constant disasters on the gas pipeline. And, in fact, radically, significantly reducing the volume of Soviet gas supplies to Western countries. And, accordingly, seriously undermining the economic power of the USSR.
Time passed, the special service improved. In 2015, Europe faced its first refugee wave. The Directorate General for External Security aimed to gather information and prevent terrorism and extremism against France and its citizens. Indeed, from 2015 to 2019, 26 terrorist attacks occurred in the country, claiming nearly 300 lives. Following explosions and attacks, France increased full-time intelligence officers. They constantly monitor suspicious people 24/7. You'll never guess the spy until he reveals himself. It can be a journalist or a doctor you know. Agents have numerous methods for obtaining information, from basic gadgets to satellite data. These are people who work in such conditions that others are simply afraid to get down to business. Ex-intelligence chief Alan Tuet noted that secret services handle the most dangerous criminals and cases. Agents may dine even with the devil if needed. They're not needed for anything else.